Hello and welcome to Birth Words. This is episode 50. Today I'll be talking with my friend Jessica Burdette, who has had 2 Hypno-Babies home births.
Welcome to Birth Words. Words are powerful. What are you doing with yours? In this podcast, birth doula and applied linguistics scholar Sarah Pixton invites you to be intentional, reflective, and empowering with your language as we come together to honor those who give birth. The work of Birth Words is to elevate the language surrounding pregnancy, birth, and the postpartum period. Nothing in this podcast should be taken as medical advice.
Welcome, Jessica, to the Birth Words podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited for everybody to hear your stories, and I'm going to give a little background to our listeners. I read Jess's bio, but Jess and I go way back from before either of us were married, before either of us had kids. We met in college and did an internship abroad for a semester. And so I'm really excited to be back in touch with her. I've seen her stories on social media as she has navigated giving birth twice and getting ready to do it again. But I'm excited to be back in touch and hear some more details about those things. So thanks for reconnecting, Jess.
Of course, it's so fun.
So with the questions I'm going to ask you, feel free to answer them for your first pregnancy, your second pregnancy, or your current pregnancy, and then your first or second birth, or your plans for your upcoming birth, whichever one seems most relevant.
Okay.
So the first question is, what words do you use or did you use to identify yourself as an expectant mother and then as a laboring mother?
So at first, I didn't really label myself. I just kind of went along and did the things. But with my first, I remember somebody calling me mama, like it was probably when I was laboring or when my daughter was first born. Congratulations, mama. And that just hit my heart so strongly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm a mama. And from then on, whether I had just barely found out I was pregnant or had been pregnant for a long time, I just consider myself like I am this baby's mama. And that's been powerful to me.
That's really cool. That's fun. What do your kids call you now?
Mama.
They still call you mama. That's cute. That's fun. How old are they?
My daughter is 3. She'll be 4 in a couple months. And then her name's Eve. My son Eli, he is almost 18 months.
Okay.
And then I'm 18 weeks pregnant with my third.
Fun. Okay, cool. So as you prepared for pregnancy and birth, did you find that there were any ideas or frameworks or ways of thinking that you'd been exposed to throughout your life that you needed to work through or reframe to prepare yourself for a positive birth experience?
Definitely. With my first pregnancy, I realized pretty early on that the stories people would tell me and the things they would tell me about labor and birth had a big impact on me. And I realized as I was reading What to Expect When You're Expecting,
Mm-hmm.
I read through a good chunk of that book before just deciding to stop because it kind of created a lot of fear in me. I was reading about, these conditions and possibilities that could come up, and I started to internalize that and wonder if I had this or that. And I realized this isn't good for me. So I closed the book, I put it away. And same thing with stories. Some people would just tell me their horror stories of giving birth. And I learned to kind of create a shield around me, okay, these words, I'm hearing them, but I'm letting them bounce off.
Mm-hmm.
That's her story. It doesn't have to be mine.
Mm-hmm.
So I just had to be very intentional about what I let into my heart. And I started reading books that resonated better with me. That's when I found a book about hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And I would talk with people who had positive birth experiences and really look for those, seek those out. And that made a really big difference, and it put me on the path that ended up leading me to home birth and natural birth. And so I'm really happy that I listened to my spirit and my heart and kind of how I would feel when people would tell me certain things or I'd read certain things.
Mm-hmm. I think that's beautiful that you were so in touch with the effect of the stories that you were letting into your life, and the not even stories, but just the texts, right? That you were, the language that you were allowing to touch you and shape your experience, even through your first pregnancy, that you were aware of that power and mindful about what you wanted to bring into the space.
Yeah, I feel like in pregnancy, we're even more susceptible. At least I am more
Mm-hmm.
emotional, more hormonal. Things
Yeah.
affect me
Uh-huh.
even more than usual. So I was pretty aware of that.
Yeah. I think that's definitely true, and so extra important to be aware of what you're bringing into your space and into your heart, like you said. So, you ended up having using hypnobirthing for both of your births. Is that?
Yes, so I took a class during my first pregnancy, a Hypno-Babies class, and I read the book that was like the Mongan method.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are two slightly different things, but they
Uh-huh.
were great, fabulous resources. The Hypno-Babies class was very informative for my husband and I. My husband was very pro hospital birth. That was the quote safe way to go. And so in that class, he learned a lot about the mechanics of birth and how it all
Mm-hmm.
works, how natural and normal
Mm-hmm.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really helped prepare us both for what would end up being a home birth. Yeah.
That's awesome. I just had my podcast guest for this week, which we're recording this on April 16th. So the episode that came out on April 13th was an interview with Carrie Tushoff, the founder of Hypnobabies.
Oh,
And so, yeah. So anybody who hasn't checked that out, if you're listening to this will be released several weeks later, but go back to episode 42 and check out the conversation I had with Carrie about how she came to develop Hypnobabies from the experiences that she had. And she gave some really powerful examples of just like little shifts that we can make in the way that we talk about birth that can really affect the experience you're having. So,
awesome. I'm
yeah,
excited. I'm going to look that up for sure.
yeah, it's been a great one. So, I had to give a little plug for that since you mentioned Hypnobabies. But yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so when you were going into your birth experience, whichever one comes to mind, can you remember any words that you used or that others used that frame that experience for you?
So like I mentioned, I've always been very intentional about what I allow in. I always write down a birth plan. Um, and I also, for this last birth, for Eli's birth at home, I wrote down words that were meaningful to me, and I just took a 9 by, a regular piece of paper, and I would write down a word really bold in
Mm-hmm.
a Sharpie marker, and I taped them up around my room, bathroom, wherever I thought I might be laboring. And they said things like peace, relax. I put one on the roof right above my bed that said open, so that when I was like lying in bed, I'd see that and just
Mm-hmm.
be encouraged. And then I had resources from the Hypnobabies class that I had my husband read to me, and I also just played off of my phone. And those were really impactful as well. With my first birth, we didn't listen to any of the tracks that I had, but my husband knew the cue words and he had
Mm-hmm.
memorized a few phrases and just kind of made up some of his own as well. And that really helped me to breathe or relax or whatever he was saying to me. And then in the second birth, we actually had it playing. I said, "Oh, play the track that's called Pushing Baby Out," because I'm actually pushing and I want to listen to it while I'm doing it. And there was a moment when I was pushing and it was very intense, powerful, and something that they said on the track, and I probably am not even remembering it correctly, but what I thought I heard at the time was something like, the more powerful your feelings, the more powerful the waves are right now, the more powerful you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so impactful for me at the moment. I just felt like I could do anything, like I could overcome anything. And that's when I pushed him out, was right after I heard that.
That's
So
awesome. I love that. And it reminds me of some of the examples that Carrie gave in episode 42 about, she was just very mindful about using that word power in places where people will often use the word pain or difficulty, and how much difference it makes to be like, the more powerful these waves are, the more powerful I am. And like, this is the most powerful experience I'll have during my life. And I love that. Like, I've fallen in love with birth because I love to see people discover their strength and their power through that experience, because it's unlike anything else, and no other life experiences, it comes even close to just the strength and the power that we have when we give birth. So I think it's so beautiful, so awesome. Cool.
absolutely.
Do you have any other thoughts about the role that words played for you in the birth space or during your birth experience? Or does that kind of cover it?
I just remembered I also listened to positive affirmations.
Mm-hmm.
I love those. I'm a huge fan. I've listened to like 45 minutes a day of positive
That's awesome.
affirmations. And with this current pregnancy, I want to write my own affirmations and either read them to myself or maybe record them on my phone and listen to them, because that also was really empowering for me like every time I would listen to them, it would sink in a little bit deeper, and I would believe it a little bit more that, like, yeah, my baby is healthy and safe inside me, and I make good decisions for my baby and my body, and my baby is born at the perfect time, and I can say no when I need to say no. Just lots of empowering statements like that I feel like we need. You don't always get those messages from other sources.
Yeah, for sure.
That's another source I love.
Yeah, cool. I love it. Thank you for sharing about all of those things. Yeah. So I just have one last question for you, which is, if you had to summarize your feelings about birth in just one word, what word would you choose?
I knew that would be your last question, and I've listened to your podcast.
And everybody always pauses.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about it as I've been preparing for this interview. And this whole week, I thought my word was powerful. But the more I kind of looked at my own stories, I realized maybe my word is intuitive. The birth for me is intuitive. And if I allow myself to be the one directing, be the one I don't know, deciding how things play out, that it goes a lot better. So I'm going to say intuitive.
I love it. Cool. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your stories and your thoughts. I really
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
If you're interested in sharing your ideas or experiences on the podcast, go to birthwords.com. If you're liking what you hear, please leave a review on your podcast app. For more resources about language for a better birth, subscribe to the monthly newsletter at birthwords.com and follow Birthwords on Instagram and Facebook.